Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel. And before we continue with our teaching, some people just never learn. No, they don't. What happened a couple weeks ago? We know what happened. Our fun-loving cousins murdered 7 of us on Friday night and then shot another guy right outside the city of David, a 13-year-old kid with the handgun. Here's your education. Shot at a family, and the guy's in the hospital, critical condition. As a result, we, for the dead and for the sick, we did not say Baruch Dayan Haemet. We said, may God take vengeance upon their souls. The souls of Ishmael. 1 week later, a 7.8, you get it, earthquake hit Turkey and Syria. Right now, as of today, and again, I record this on Monday, as of today, the death toll is at 35,000 and rising. 35,000 and rising, and it's going to go up more. This on Tu B'Shvat, yes. And why was it on Tu B'Shvat and the significance of that? So the Christians cannot say, oh, look, we know what God is doing. Because Tu B'Shvat has nothing to do with Christianity. It's a rabbinical holiday, and yet that is quite literally the root of everything to sprout up from the ground, including the shoot of the son of Jesse. Okay, so what is that? What does that mean to Christianity? It's a Monday. That's all it is. Meaningless. But we know. 2 weeks later, our peace-loving cousins decide to get in a car and run over a father and his 2 small children. So, Yaakov, 6 years old, and Asher, 8 years old, they were murdered. They were murdered on Friday afternoon, and their father, Avraham, is in critical condition in the hospital. May God take vengeance upon their souls. May they know no peace and no rest from now and until eternity. I was considering doing a teaching about everything that's going on and the timing and the specifics and where, why, how, and the gematria and what it says in the Zohar. A lot of people are doing this right now. A lot of crazy things are happening in the sky right now, right over specific places. Things that the news is not telling you, that the mainstream media, of course, is not telling you. Keep your ear to the ground right now. Keep your eyes open. You have no idea where we're at right now. So I'm not going to get into any of that because I also want to see what happens. In the meantime, I really am enjoying the show. And so these people that they think they can get away with this, obviously they're not. And we can see the retribution is swift. And God's vengeance, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, right? Okay. Anyway, like we said, nothing could be a greater gut punch than learning Torah. And so this is to the Ilui of their neshamot and to the refuah shlema of their father, Avraham Noach. Chapter 32b. This is the 11th trial of Abraham. And what is this, the 11th trial of Abraham? We will see exactly. Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol haomim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai leolam. Hallelujah. When our father Abraham came from Mount Moriah, the anger of the Samech Mem, the Satan, Sammy, was kindled, for he saw that the desire of his heart to frustrate the offering of our father Abraham had not been realized. Just a quick backstory from the book of Jasher about how this whole thing began, okay? And the day arrived when the sons of God came and placed themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with the sons of God before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? As in, where are you coming from, dude? And Satan answered the Lord, saying, from going to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down in it. In other words, as you know, doing my job, right? And yes, this is just like the beginning of the book of Job. And the Lord said to Satan, what is your word to me concerning all the children of the earth? And Satan answered to the Lord, said, I have seen all the children of the earth who serve thee and remember thee when they require anything from thee. And when thou givest them the thing which they require from thee, they sit at their ease and forsake thee, and they remember thee no more. This is true. Hast thou seen Abraham the son of Terah, who at first had no children, and he served thee and erected altars to thee wherever he came, and he brought up offerings upon them, and he proclaimed thy name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, that which Abraham coveted more than anything else in this world and in the next, right? He has forsaken thee. He has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, and the Lord he has forgotten. For amidst all that he has done, he brought thee no offering, neither burnt offering nor peace offering, neither ox, lamb, or goat, of all that he killed on the day that his son was weaned. Even from the time of his son's birth till now, being 37 years, he built no altar before thee, nor brought any offering to thee, for he saw that thou didst give him what he requested before thee, and he therefore forsook thee. And the Lord said to Satan, hast thou thus considered my servant Abraham? For there is none, again, like, okay, but look at him, right? For there is none like him upon the earth, a perfect and an upright man before me, one that feareth God and avoideth evil. As I live, were I to say unto him, bring up Isaac thy son before me, he would not withhold him from me. Much more if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me for his flock or herds. In other words, God said, I already know what he can do. I know what he would do. You still don't know what he can do. So here's a lesson for you, Satan. And Satan answered the Lord and said, speak then now unto Abraham, as thou hast said, and thou wilt see whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside thy words. Okay, so after this point, Genesis 22 begins, obviously. Now, if you read the next chapter in the book of Jasher, if you continue reading, as well as Bereshit Rabbah and other Midrashim, you will see how Satan was hopping back and forth between Isaac and Abraham, trying to distract them, trying to get them not focused, trying to get them to regret, even for a moment, of what they were about to do. When that simply didn't work, what did he do? He went on to Sarah. Now back to our text. What did he do? He went and told Sarah, oh, Sarah, have you not heard what has happened in the world? She said, nuh-uh. He said to her, your old man, it literally says, Ishech hazaken, your old man. Okay. Maybe that's where the bikers got it from. I don't know. Took the young man, Isaac, as an offering, and the youth was weeping and moaning that he could not be saved. Immediately Sarah began to weep and to moan. For the complete Drash correspondence, just continue reading Jasher. What happened back and forth, how he presented himself to her, what did he look like when he came to her, because it wasn't like, hey, I'm Satan. No, that's not how that happened. It's never how that happens, okay? Now, the question our sages have is a valid one. How could it be that Sarah would be sad to her core? How could this be? Is she not a tzadikah just like Abraham? Of course she was. They were on the level. With her having a higher level of prophecy than Abraham. The eye weeps bitterly, but the heart rejoices. This was their whole thing. This was Abraham and Isaac. This is how they were able to do it. Sarah should have been genuinely happy to know that God desired Isaac as the perfect offering. Should she not have? The answer is that this part was left out of the story, obviously, as told by Satan. I wonder why. Furthermore, which also shows you, okay, it's even if you speak the truth, but you leave out certain details, it's a lie and it's part of manipulation. So again, you have to find out for yourself the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. For real. Okay, furthermore, Satan used the words old man on purpose to allude to Abraham not having all his wits about him. The old, senile old man, he went to go throw your son up on the altar over there. Another opinion is that Satan came to her in the form of Isaac, crying and weeping and wailing. Now, she knew it wasn't him, and yet it broke her heart to physically see her son in pain. You ever see those movies where you have like the main character has to stand up to like some sort of shape-shifting supernatural entity, right? Or one that has mind control, able to make you think, the lead character think what they want them to think, right? They usually project the person's daughter in the state of submission. I don't have any particular movie in mind, but we've all seen this before, right? It's like you finally got it. You're finally about to win. You're about to end the tyrannic reign of this demon or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it becomes like your little girl. Daddy, please, why are you hurting me? Like, it's just that one moment that kind of throws you off. So guess what? Where do you think all these Hollywood movies take their things from? There you go. That moment, they freeze and relent, and that's usually the end of them. All right? So Sarah, our mother, was dealing with Satan head on, and he was pulling every dirty trick in the book. But if you read Jasher, which you should, he didn't beat her. Because she didn't die out of heartbreak. She died out of joy. And that is why her soul left her body. Because first he says, oh, Isaac was dead. And then, so she was sad, obviously. But then he came out, no, Isaac lives. And the book of Jasher said, and she was joyous. And then so much so that her soul left her body. In other words, she died actually in a moment of peace, right? So now the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says something slightly different, but again, it doesn't negate that these are midrashim. She began to weep and cry aloud 3 times, corresponding to the 3 sustained notes, tkiot, the blowings of the shofar, and she gave forth 3 howlings corresponding to the 3 disconnected short notes of the shofar, and her soul fled and she died. Okay, are you aware of these 3 notes? This is why we have these 3 kind of notes from the shofar on Rosh Hashanah to correspond the cries of Sarah, our mother. Isaac was bound on Rosh Hashanah. We read this story on Rosh Hashanah, and we blow the shofar as our cries ascend, just like Sarah. So you have tkiah. That's the long blow and the scream. Listen, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I wasn't going to do it because it's fine. So this is the tkiah. It's the one long blow, right? Excuse me. Okay, so that's the scream. The second one is shvarim. What is shvarim? It comes from shever. It's broken up. So think of a long blow and it's broken up. So this really sounds like moaning. So it's right? And then the last one is truah. Truah, usually this is a battle cry. This is what they would blow the shofar before, you have all of Israel charging down the mountain. Right? So those are the 3 tkiot that we blow on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, obviously it's got to be 100 of those. Anyway, and Abraham, our father, came to find out that she had died, as said in Genesis 23:2. So after all these things took place, in other words, they came back. Vatamat Sarah b'Kiryat Arba hu Chevron be'eretz Knan vayavo Avraham lispod leSarah ve'livkota. And Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to eulogize Sarah and to bewail her. And where did he come from? He came from Mount Moriah. Now, this is not written in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, nor have I seen it anywhere else, but rather, I heard this very interesting perspective from Rav Yaakov Maurer. Now, this is the 11th trial of Abraham. There's a lot of other stories you'll see over here with Rivka and also with Isaac and even with Jacob in this particular teaching, but this is the most important thing, I think, from this class, okay? This is the 11th trial of Abraham. Now, if you're thinking that we are ever done with the trials, you are mistaken, okay? But what was so significant about this trial is that it was the deciding factor whether or not everything Abraham had done would actually stick, or would it be thrown away? Meaning the entire life that he lived, all his previous trials. So what do I mean? How exactly is this a trial? Here's a very important life lesson, okay? This happens to us every day, so pay attention. The most deciding of all the trials of Abraham, which you and I still go through till this day, and this is the trial. You've just received something incredible from God. Okay? I'm saying You just received something incredible from God, right? It could be in the form of good news, a birth, a raise at work. I don't know, anything that you've been desiring or working on very hard towards. In other words, your hard work finally paid off. Your patience paid off, right? Your endurance paid off, and finally you get that which you really, really desired. See Isaac to Abraham. And so you are like our father Abraham, who passed his final test with flying colors, solidifying his seed forever, bound with God and his covenant. Wonderful. That's it. That's the highest of the heights. That's the one. Tayadati, now I know. But God always knew this is to shut Satan's mouth. This is to shut all the mouths of the angels and say, yep, now we understand why you created the world. Okay. And then from the highest high, you go to the lowest low. Abraham loved three things, okay? I mean, of course, he loved ahavet habriot. He loved all of creation. That goes without saying. He loved human beings. That goes without saying. But within all of God's creation, he loved three things. One, God, obviously, right? Always first in his, God said, Avraham ohavi, Abraham, the one who loves me. If God says that, you know that that's what's up. So, number one, always, God. Always first in his life, from before he ever even spoke to him. He saw God's universe and understood, to the best of his capability, how much God is love and how we all exist because God wanted to share. He literally lived and would die for God in a heartbeat. This is how he became to be Abraham, the man of chesed, because he emulated God. Chesed. Notzer chesed la'alafim. God is all chesed. He just gives, and our entire existence is chesed. We don't need to exist, but God said, here and here more. And when we sin, God says, I'll sustain these dark demonic angels that you created that are destroying the world for the sake of your tshuva, because it's worth it. I'll pay them. You understand? God. So Abraham emulated God, and that's why he was Isha Chesed. So number one in Abraham's life, God, as it should be in all our lives. Number two, his beloved wife, Sarah. She had been with him through thick and through thin. She was the only other person alive who truly understood him. She was the judgment to his mercy, because men are chesed and women are gvura, right? Yeah, sure, it's all women are like boundaries, right? Together, you need them both together for a healthy household. She was his protection as much as he was hers. When he doubted himself, he turned to her because he knew the kind of woman that she was. So he didn't doubt her. And she was righteous, and he loved her with all his heart for all of his life. And three, Isaac, the spitting image of Abraham, the son that had been promised, the truest desire of his heart from all the blessings and promisings of God. If Isaac wasn't there, then literally none of it would have mattered. And after 100 years of longing, it happened. He watched him grow into his likeness and image, both in looks and in deeds, as he faithfully followed in his father's footsteps in Derech Eretz, in Torah, and of course in his absolute love for God, the pinnacle being his words to his father at the binding itself, right? Father, make sure you bind my hands and my feet that I don't move. Hasten, let's do this. We don't want to keep God waiting. This is my son. Oh, this is my son. You understand? Can you imagine? It just to think about this story is so much. Okay. So these are the three things that Abraham loved most. Abraham returns the victor, defeating Satan, which was just the distraction along the way, but overcoming his very makeup and inclination in order to faithfully serve his creator. You see, whenever we lose, it's always to ourselves. Whenever we win, it's always to ourselves. What does that mean? Whenever we lose, whenever we do something, let's say if someone, someone starts taunting us or something. Yeah, I know sometimes you want to knock someone's head off. Trust me, I know. But if you do that, even though they had it coming, if you will, let's say, and even though You knocked them down and they're out. You still lost, you see? Because it wasn't about that person. Who sent that person? God sent that person to test you. That's all it is. So even when you win in that case, you lost. You lost to your anger. You lost to your pride. Abraham overcame, it wasn't the distractions that Satan was bringing all around. He overcame himself to do the bidding of God without hesitation and in haste. That was his victory, okay? So again, promises were given, praises were granted after his victory, and I can only imagine the thought in his mind, how much he was missing his wife at that moment, how he couldn't wait to return their son to her, as well as to share the great news, what had just happened, the promises that God just gave. But when he returned from the highest point, he found Sarah, his beloved, dead. That's the moment where everything was on the line, at that moment, right there, the moment he finds her dead. And there's a reason I'm building all this up, right? If God forbid Abraham would have had the slightest thought or feeling of remorse or regret, meaning, oh, if only I were here, this wouldn't have happened, then everything he had been through would have been undone. Do you understand that moment of, or that moment of, why? And looking back, no regret, no nothing, just moving forward. Satan could not get to him or Isaac. So his last-ditch attempt was to hit Abraham right in his heart. Sarah, his beloved. Needless to say, Abraham, being Abraham, as difficult as it was, he did not waver, nor did he have a moment of regret how things had transpired, because he knew this occurrence, like all things, is from God. Okay? Me'et Adonai hayta zot hi niflat be'einenu. This is all from the Lord. Everything is from God. If we remember that, we are beginning to walk like Abraham. And that's where we want to go. With that kind of love and understanding, whatever comes, however it comes, any person that comes, any fly that comes, any small inconvenience that comes, everything, no matter how big or small, no matter how good or seemingly bad, it all comes from God. A lot of times, what is seemingly good is really bad. For instance, a lot of times when people win the lottery, depending where they are, obviously, they end up becoming miserable, broke, committing suicide, whatever. It's not good. You understand? There's a famous story of the Chafetz Chaim. He lived in the early 1900s, between World War I and World War II. And he had a dream of, and in the dream, an angel said, listen, we have a great fortune, meaning physical fortune in this world is coming to you. He was a huge tzaddik. And he woke up the next morning and he did a ta'anit. What is it, ta'anit? Fasting and lamenting. In other words, God says, I'm going to give you money. And he says, I don't want it. And he fasted to undo that. Why? What? Could he not handle it? Of course he could handle it. But he didn't want to handle it. More money, more problems, right? Okay. So everything comes from God. We need to remember that. When I stub my toe, that's from God. I'm like, why did that happen? Oh yeah, I know why that happened. Anyway, everything comes from God. We have to remember this. Drill it into your consciousness, because this way, every step we take, we have that consciousness that God is not, it's not around. God is everything. He's everything. The concept of tzimtzum, restriction, constriction. God did that to himself that we can exist. And he was stretching out the heavens, which as we know as the universe or whatever, until he said, die. That's why it's El Shaddai. Die means stop. Enough. That's as far as you stretch out the heavens. Because God is Ein Sof, endless, infinite, they would have stretched out forever and just kept on going. You see? Okay. Remember that. Now take note, people. just as David did when he said in Psalms 118, Even ma'asu abonim hayta lerosh pinah, the stone that the builders rejected became a cornerstone. And the verse, Me'et Adonai et hazot hi niflat be'einenu, this was from the Lord, it is wondrous in our eyes. We might not understand it now, but we will soon. Said Abraham, said David, and so say all of us. Isaiah 51:1, hearken to me, your pursuers of righteousness. Do you pursue righteousness? Shimu elai rodfei tzedek. Mevakshei Adonai, who is tzedek? Tzedek is the planet of Abraham, righteousness. You seekers of the Lord, look at the rock whence you were hewn, and at the hole of the pit whence you were dug. You want to know where you came from? Look at Abraham your father, and at Sarah who bore you, for when he was but one, I called him, and I blessed him and made him many. So again, other religions want to call other people their rock. That's no problem, okay? Where's the rock that we came from? Abraham and Sarah, Isaiah 51. We all come from Abraham and Sarah, the rock from which we were hewed. And in this case, understand this. Then Job stood up and rent his robe and tore his hair. Then he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. And he said, from my mother's womb I emerged naked, and I will return there naked. The Lord gave and the Lord took. May the name of the Lord be blessed. Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach. Yehi shem Adonai mevorach. This is something that Abraham would absolutely say. Despite all this, all the hardships, Job did not sin, neither did he ascribe unseemliness to God. Velo natan tifla. Tifla is like tafel, anything inappropriate to God. In other words, held nothing against God. This is how Abraham walked over here right now, with all his trials, and especially this last one, after his greatest victory. And this came after his greatest victory on purpose. It is widely understood that the book of Job was written by Moses. Okay, they're saying, Lo haya velo nivra, there was never a man named Job. Yes, Job, there is a Job that was one of Pharaoh's advisors. But we don't necessarily know that this is the same man. In any case, Job is a very, very deep book. It's all about creation, the reason behind creation. It's amazing. And here once again is your Adam trifecta, Abraham, David, and Moses. Understand this message, please. None of this is in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. I'm giving this to you right now because you need to understand this. Internalize it, and you can rise to any challenge and overcome any obstacle. And that, my friends, that is the 11th trial of Abraham. Now we can get back to PDE. Rabbi Yossi says, for 3 years, Isaac mourned for Sarah, his mother. Now, we all lost people, right? Family, friends. And we know from the Torah that there's a time and place for everything. God has his time, right? How do we know that the days of Shiva, mourning, which literally means Shiva, literally means 7, is 7 days. This count begins from when the body is put in the ground. That's after the body's put in the ground, you sit 7 days. Genesis 50, verse 10. And they came to the threshing floor of the thorn bushes, which is on the other side of the Jordan. And there they conducted a very great and impressive eulogy. And he made for his father a mourning of 7 days. This is Joseph burying Jacob. Mourning for his father, 7 days. Now, we also have a shloshim. What is the shloshim? After 30 days, the mourners go up to the gravesite, and then the tombstone is placed. But again, it's tradition that it's placed on the 30th day. It could be any time throughout those 11 months. But the mourners remain in that area. Now, where can we see this? Deuteronomy 34:8. And the sons of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days, and the days of weeping over the mourning of Moses came to an end. All of Israel mourned Moses' death, right? So we say plains of Moab, 30 days they were sitting there. Then today we say Kaddish for the deceased for 11 months. Why not 12 months? Why not a full year? Because 12 months the full year is reserved for the wicked who really need that extra kaddish for the elevation of their souls. But once the year is complete, the person is no longer considered an avel, a mourner. So how could it be, and again, we do this today, how could it be that Isaac, and take note, it says Isaac and not Abraham, was mourning for 3 whole years? The Radal says, Avelut yetera al hadin haya. Bottom line, he overdid it. Yeter is too much, like itro, right? More, giving more. So he overdid it. And in the Agadat Bereshit, this is called Evel Shoteh, a fool's mourning. If you want to mourn for someone for 3 years, it's a fool's mourning. So we also see David, now look at me, mourning, right? For Amnon for 3 years, despite what he had done to his sister. Game of Thrones has nothing on the Bible, okay? And Avshalom fled, and he went to Talmai, the son of Amihud, the king of Geshur, and he mourned for his son all the days. And Avshalom fled, and he went to Geshur, and he was there 3 years. And the soul of King David longed to go forth to Avshalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, being that he was dead. In other words, he was only comforted after the 3-year period was done. So, meaning only after 3 years there was like a lifting. Something was lifted. But does it really mean that they mourned them for 3 years? Did they, sit on the floor and is that what that means? Or does it mean that only after 3 years did they heal? This question was already answered in chapter 30 of Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, where after 3 years, Abraham sending Ishmael away, then he went to visit him, right? Because we learned that 3 years is the time it takes for the heart to forget, for the pain to subside. It might not necessarily take it away forever, but definitely enough to go on about your business. I mean, you got to go on about your business after that time anyway, especially after you're done with the Avelut, those 11 months of Kaddish, you're done. And even during those 11 months, you have to continue with your life. You can't just sit there. The only time that you're actually literally supposed to sit and mourn is 7 days. That's it. So again, Isaac did not mourn Sarah, nor David mourned Amnon for 3 whole years, because that would indeed be Evel Shoteh, a fool's mourning. They were not fools, obviously, but rather they were healing for 3 years, and after that, they were okay. Again, unless I know some people that are just holding on to the dead for years, and what are you doing? A fool's mourning. After 3 years, he, Isaac, took Rivkah and forgot about the mourning of Sarah, his mother, as we can see this in Genesis 24:67. And Isaac brought her to the tent of Sarah, his mother, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted for the loss of his mother, because she filled that same spiritual gap over there. Sarah, again, they say also that Rivkah was born at the same time that Sarah died. There always has to be a balance in the world. From here we can learn that until a man takes a wife, his love goes after his parents. When he takes a wife, his love goes after her, as said in Genesis 2:24, right? This is what I was thinking. This is what you're thinking. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife until they shall become one flesh. And does a man leave his father and mother from the command of honoring them? Of course not. But rather, it is the love of his own life is that what makes him cleave to his wife, as said, V'davak beishto. What this means is that a man loves his own self more than anything else. It says it. Chazal say it, you love yourself more than anything else, right? But now that his love is shared with his wife because they cleave to one another as they should, and the verse says, and they shall become one flesh, you love her just like you love yourself. You get it? Okay, it's very simple. Rabbi Yehuda says, for 20 years, Rivkah was barren. In Masechet Yevamot, it also says that Isaac was barren. In other words, they both were. And this is very interesting. It says it in many different places. We can also see it in the language itself, in the Torah. After 20 years, but specifically on the 19th year, Isaac took her to Mount Moriah, to the very spot where he was bound, to pray for pregnancy, and God accepted his prayer, as said in Genesis 25:21. And Isaac prayed to the Lord opposite his wife because she was barren, and the Lord accepted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Listen, our sages say that what they did was give an offering upon the altar as part of the prayer. But now why does it also say, Vayater lo Hashem, and the Lord accepted his prayer? Because he was also barren, you see? Since they were both praying, the reason it says that God answered his prayer specifically was because of his father also. Again, there are different layers to this. Because of his father, he has zchut avot. Both Isaac and Rivka were complete tzaddikim. No question here, yeah? But Isaac had the merit of his father being Abraham, while Rivka's father was an idolater and her brother was a murdering swindler. So she could only go... So again, if they're completely equal, Isaac still has backup where she does not. Nevertheless, they're one person, right? It doesn't matter. They both wanted the same thing. Shortly after, she did indeed conceive. As the time was nearing for her to give birth, she had almost died from the pain she had inside. This is roughly around the 7th month mark. She had a full-term pregnancy, but listen. This would be translated from as birth pangs, chavalim, chavalei Mashiach, right? The birth pangs of Messiah. So in any case, from the chavalim, from these birth pangs, she almost died. According to Jasher and other midrashim, this happened in the beginning of the 7th month, which was how long all the other pregnancies of Jacob's children were. So the 12 tribes, they all had 7-month pregnancies. But after she inquired of the Lord, she gave birth in the 9th month, so for 2 more months over there. In Genesis 25:22, it says, "And the children struggled within her, and she said, 'If it be so, why am I like this?' As she went to inquire of the Lord." Vayitrotzatzu abanim bekirba. Larutz is to run. Yitrotzatzu is there's actually crazy movement going on. She was being ripped apart inside. So the Hebrew says, Lama ze anochi? Why am I like this? That's what the translation says. So lama is why. Ze, zayin hey, is the gematria of 12, alluding to the 12 tribes which Rivka was supposed to originally give birth to. But she was really being ripped apart inside, like we said, as the boys Yaakov and Esau were at war, a sign of things to come. Because she said, "Why do I need this? Lama zanochi? Why do I need this? I don't want this." This would be her first and last pregnancy. As Esau left her womb, he pierced and gripped it with his fingernails. Oh yeah, of his mother, which another reason why he came out all ruddy or red-like, it was Rivka's blood all over him. As a result of this conflict inside her, she went to a pure place to pray. Okay, so in other words, this is between the 7th and 9th month. She went to a pure place, makom tahor, to pray, as is said in the same verse, and she went to inquire of the Lord. If you want to go inquire of the Lord, probably get out of you're not going to go inquire, even though God is everywhere, you're not going to go inquire of the Lord in the toilet, let alone in a seedy bar toilet or something. You go to a holy place. When people really want to pray over here in Israel, they're going to go to the kotel, right? I could do it right here in my office room thing, okay? But again, and I'm in Jerusalem, this is a wonderful thing, but yeah, when you really want to get that thing, you go there. What, can God not hear from anywhere, including in a seedy bathroom of a rundown dive bar? Of course, God is everywhere, in everything. He is everything. But this is also for you. You understand? Okay. So she went to a pure place to pray, and the Radal says that all of Israel is makom tahol. All of Israel is a pure place, but a pure and holy place. So all of Israel is pure, aval makom tahol ve'kadosh, holy place, that is Mount Moriah. So we go to the Kotel. Meaning she went back to that same pure and holy place, that same spot her husband took her to pray last year, or shortly, a little more than 7 months before. In Jasher, it says that she inquired of Shem, the man of God and prophet formerly known as Melchizedek. Formerly, because that title then went to Abraham, as we learned. And the boys were in her belly, like mighty men, as said, and the children struggled within her. Now, I want to read Targum Yonatan for you on these last few verses, okay? It's fascinating. Targum Yonatan, basically, he writes every verse for verse in the 5 books of Moses, yet everything is a prophecy. It's all in Aramaic, but they do have translations. Everything is a prophecy, and everything comes in the form of a remez and the sod. It's just brilliant. Anyway, and the children pressed in her womb as men doing battle. And she said, if this is the anguish of a mother, what then are children to me? Right? Why do I need this? And she went into the school of Shem, the great. Shem was Shem Hagadol, right? To supplicate mercy before the Lord. And the Lord said to her, through Shem, 2 peoples are in thy womb, and 2 kingdoms from thy womb shall be separated. And 1 kingdom shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger, if the children of the younger will keep the commandments of the law. Oh, there is Targum Yonatan in Sepharia, in English. Check that out. Okay. And the 270 days of her being with child were completed to bring forth, and behold, twins were in her womb. Now, this is very interesting. The word for pregnancy, herayon, okay, be is in herayon. Herayon is pregnancy. The numerical value is 271. That's our 270 days plus the one, the only one, the Holy One, blessed be He. You can't make this stuff up. And the first one emerged ruddy, and he was completely like a coat of hair, and they named him Esau. Targum Yonatan says, and the first came forth wholly red, meaning like completely red, probably from the blood, as a garment of hair, and they called his name Esau because he was born altogether complete, with the hair on his head, and a beard, and teeth and grinders. Okay, you ever see Critters? Yeah, okay. That could be positively terrifying, no? Right. What did our father Jacob do? He grabbed a hold of Esau's heel. Akev, Yaakov Akev, right? Heel to take him down, as said in verse 26. He's like, oh, no, you don't. And afterwards his brother emerged, and his hand was grasping Esau's heel, and they named him Jacob. And he named him Jacob. Now Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. When she gave birth to them, excuse me. From here we can learn that the sons of Esau cannot fall until a remnant of Jacob will come and cut his legs off, as it said in the book of Daniel. You understand this? The kingdom of Edom today in the world, you could call it Rome, but it's the United States. It's Russia, it's Europe, it's the Western world, if you will. That's essentially Edom. Christianity, they're all part of that same umbrella over there. And who's going to take them down? Jacob is going to cut their legs off. As said in the book of Daniel 2:34, you were watching until 1 stone was hewn without hands, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and crumbled them. We've also learned that iron and clay is a hint what's to come, iron being Rome, Edom, Esau, and clay being Ishmael, Islam. They're going to go at it, Christianity and Islam, just like they have been for the last 1,000 years. And in Deuteronomy 32:35, it says, vengeance is poised with me, and it will pay at the time their foot stumbles. Right here. For the appointed day of the reckoning is near, and what is destined for them hastens. Tick-tock on the clock. Rav Acha said, the Utes grew. This one went the way of life, and this one went the way of death, as said in Genesis 25:27. And the youths grew up, and Esau was a man who knew hunting, a man of the field, whereas Jacob was an innocent man dwelling in tents. You can't just translate this from the Hebrew like that. It's all the words in Hebrew, they actually mean something, okay? But Nagid, let's say, Jacob, our father, went in the way of life as he would sit dwelling in tents, dealing with Torah his entire life. Now in Hebrew it says, Shehaya Yoshev Ohalim. This is why it is called a yeshiva. Right now, ani b'matzav yeshiva. What am I doing? Am I standing? Ani b'matzav amida. Am I standing? No, ani b'matzav. Matzav is situation. Yeshiva. So, yeshiva literally means to sit, but biblically speaking and rabbinically speaking, it means a house of study. She'aya yoshev ohalim. Another term for it is also called Beit Midrash. They are one and the same, okay? Although within the yeshiva, there is also a Beit Midrash. What is a drash? What am I giving you right now? This is a drash. It's an extrapolation upon Torah. I'm giving you a drashot right now. Drashot is in plural. So another way to call this is to inquire. Lidrosh, meaning, what is God telling us in this text? So I get the things, I read the books, I look through all the sages, I give comparisons, other verses, and now here I am trying to explain to you what it is through the lenses of how the sages see it, but with my life experience, if you will. In other words, how I relate to these things, that's how I'm relating it to you. That's why different people have different teaching styles. Whatever works for them. So we could see this very language of Beit Midrash or Lidrosh when Rivka clearly came to inquire of the Lord in 25:22. Vatelech lidrosh et Hashem, and she went to inquire of the Lord. Lidrosh, as in Beit Midrash, she went to the Beit Midrash. Okay. And as far as the dwelling in tents, Jasher and other Midrashim confirm that he dwelt in the yeshiva or Beit Midrash of Shem, and then later on his son Ever. And Esau the wicked would go in the way of death to kill Jacob our father, as said in 27:41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing that his father had blessed him, and Esau said to himself, let the days of mourning for my father draw near. I will then kill my brother Jacob. Ikrevu yamei Evel avi v'arga et Yaakov achi. Rabbi Shimon said, when Isaac was bound, he lifted his eyes to the heavens, and he saw the Shekhinah, as said in Exodus 33:20. Vayomer lo tuchal lirot et panai ki lo yire'eni adam v'chai. And he said, you will not be able to see my face, for no man shall see me and live. Does God have a face? Some people think so. But no, God does not have a face. Chas v'shalom, right? And lo guf and lo dmut guf. He has no image. You have not seen nothing. As we just read in this last week's parsha. Although we have Arich Anpin, the long face, and the Za'ir Anpin, the small face, but those are the Sfirot. It's something completely different. What else does the word for face in Hebrew mean? Panim. What is panim? Panim is pnim. Inside, exactly the same spelling. Panim, face, pnim, inside. Ma bifnim, ma yesh bifnim, what is there inside? A person's face reflects the essence of their being. The Zohar speaks very, very clearly about this regarding the lines on one's face, how close a person's eyes are, their eyebrows, their ears, the size of their nose, their hairline. What kind of hair do they have? Curly hair? Is it wavy? Is it puffy? Is it straight? Does it fall on their face? It's crazy. There's all these things, and everything is on your face. The Ari could look at a person's face and tell them exactly what tikkun they needed to do in Shamayim. If only we had an Ari type person today. Oh, and by the way, who was the Ari? He was the Mashiach ben David of his generation, but it wasn't the time. So he imparted all his knowledge to Rav Chaim Vital, his student, to which he told him, the only reason I came to this world was to give my knowledge to you. That's it. And at the age of 38, he died, right? He doesn't need to reach 40. Reach 40, that's the age of completion. That's why when Isaac reached 40, that's when he was ready for Rivka. And a lot of interesting things. In any case, panim and pnim. Okay, so all facial features have something to say about who we are, and they can change. So it's not that God would tell Moses that he couldn't see his face, but he could not comprehend his true essence while Moses being in his physical form, which is extremely limited in this physical world. Because anyone and everyone who would gaze into the depths of his face, I gotta do this just in case y'all know who's watching, would die. This essence in our world is called the Shekhinah. In Masechet Chibut HaKever, I taught this on the group, you guys. What happens to us from the moment before we die until the moment we actually die, till the moment we actually get judged, okay? It says the following. I'm just going to read this part. Again, this is not in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, but we're talking about looking upon the face. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. The following says, how does a man die? Angels come and visit him, like right before he's on his deathbed. Angels come and visit him. One of the ministering angels and one of the angels of death. The angel who keeps the accounts of his deeds and one who counts his days. In other words, okay, you did this, you did this, you did that. Another one says, listen, you have exactly this and this many days, many heartbeats and breaths to live, right? Okay. So these are the angels that come visit him. And he says to the man, arise, your time is up. Clearly, here we go. 5, 4, 3, your time is up. The man says, but my time has not yet come. Immediately, they open his eyes and he sees an angel. This is the angel of death, okay? This is the head guy. This is the angel of death. And he stretches from one end of existence to the other. Spiritual beings, yes? From one end of existence to the other. He is covered in eyes. From his heel, from the heel of his foot to the top of his head. Now, a lot of times when I've seen, all these all these videos or images of people, oh, this is what the angels look like according to the description, this and that. That's not what that means. Their eyes are not like eyes that we have. It's the best way to describe it. But why does he have all these eyes? Because he's looking in every single direction. How can I trip you up and how can I accuse you? That's why he has all eyes. That's his job. Who made him like that? The great and merciful God. Yes, exactly. So, again, he's not an independent agent. His garments are fire, and he is surrounded by fire. He is all fire, and he has a blade in his hand, which has a bitterness or a poison, I guess, at its tip, mara. From this, he dies. From this, he decays, and from this, his face becomes pale, meaning the man who's about to kick it. But he does not die until he sees the Holy One, blessed be he, personally, as said, no man shall see me and live. But they do not see him at their death. But they do see him at their death, as said in Psalms 22:30. They shall eat all the best of the earth and prostrate themselves. Before him shall all those who descend to the dust kneel. And he will not quicken his soul. V'nafsho lo ychya. So again, why is God? God personally is coming to take every single person's soul before they die? Yeah, why is God there? Because he is the owner and he is the maker of your soul. It's his property and he wants it back. That's why he's there personally. This has nothing to do with a pride thing. We don't have a proud God. We have a humble God. Remember, God is long suffering. That's humility right there. Now we know that Isaac did die on Mount Moriah. Even for a moment, we learned all about it. And now we understand just how he was able to see the Shekhinah. It says he saw the Shekhinah there. Our sages say that when his eyes were open, he was actually seeing this. In other words, this was that moment that his soul was basically, that the life was leaving his body. He was seeing this, and so he had to close them because of the intensity of the sight. It was too much. So he kept opening and closing. They said that he was kind of, the description was like, he was kind of blinking. It was too much, but you couldn't look away, right? Peeking, if you will. Now, did Isaac remain? So he died, yes, was returned, obviously, resurrected. But did Isaac remain dead? Obviously not. And so, instead of death, his eyes grew dim in his old age, as it says in Genesis 27:1. It came to pass when Isaac was old, and his eyes were too dim to see. This did not have, some midrashim say, it was the angel's tears that fell into his eyes, so he wouldn't have to witness what Abraham was going to do, and so he went blind right from that moment. But that's also not the point, because you see the description of him seeing Rivka 3 years later. Isaac did not go blind until it says right here, Vayhi ki zaken Yitzchak. Only when Isaac was old, and when the children were at a certain age. And they were in their, how old were they? They were like 15 years old at this point. Or they were a little bit after 15 years old at this point. So it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see. So this had already been decreed while he was upon the altar, right? And when Isaac was considered old, that is when his eyes began to dim, right? When he was 75 years old, starting at the death of his father, Abraham. Okay, Abraham died. Isaac was 75 years old, right? Abraham lived till 175. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. 175, 75, right? Abraham was supposed to live longer. We also know Sarah was supposed to live longer, but Abraham was supposed to live longer. But why did God say, okay, you're good right now. You don't need to be here anymore? Because at that moment, that's when the boys were 15 years old, Esau and Yaakov. 15 years old. That is when Esau went out and he killed Nimrod, another hunter. Ishmael, also another hunter. Oh, there's a very interesting question. Someone actually asked me this. Is it permissible to go hunt for sport? Not for food, for sport, okay? And a lot of sages went through this, and they said actually they couldn't find any kind of, even just for sport, right? Whatever. There's no isul. There's no prohibition to do this. However, they said there are 3 hunters in the Torah: Ishmael, Nimrod, and Esau. Look at these people and tell me if you want to go in their footsteps. That's it. Like, that should be. Maybe I don't want to do this. All right. So, and I reheard this a few days ago. That's why I'm mentioning it right now. But it's very interesting. Okay, so in any case, 15 years old. They were 15 years old at the death of Abraham, because God spared Abraham from seeing where Esau would go, basically. So so interestingly enough, though, the day that Abraham died was also the day that Nimrod was decapitated by his grandson Esau. All right. God considered Abraham so much that he didn't want to he did not want to add blindness to Isaac after the great victory of the binding, in addition to losing his beloved Sarah. His whole life after the binding, Isaac was more in the world above than he was here. Again, he was resurrected, okay? He died and came back. And he did so without any blunt force trauma, any slit to the throat or anything like that. His neshama left him. It went up, it came back down. Wow. And God did that, obviously. Because he saw, so his whole life, Isaac was more in the world above, and he saw what was going on behind the scenes. That's why this was so intense for him. That's why it's pachad Yitzchak, the fear, the reverence of Isaac. Why? Because he saw how God works and how everything we say and do and think means something, and it matters, and everything you're going to have to answer for. So in order to complete the offering, the blindness kicked in the later years. How so? Meaning the offering of Isaac. How so? From here we can learn that a blind person, says Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, is considered dead. And where do we get this from? Lamentations 3:6. He has made me dwell in darkness like those who are forever dead. And that's our class for today. Now again, one takeaway. We're not done with the chapter yet. One takeaway from all of this is that it's never over. As you always have to be ready, because the crippling blows, they usually come from where you least expect it, okay? If something incredible comes, Don't be afraid for, oh no, God's going to take this away from me. It's not about that. God gave that to you. But really to solidify it, that to put the cherry on top, to give you that extra bonus. If something comes next and you're not too happy with it, don't, why? Everything was going well. Don't do that. God is, boy, is he testing you. But now he's testing you like he tested Abraham. And we can all actually pass this test. So pay attention. All right. So everything is a test, and yet still that does not mean that you cannot live in peace and happiness. You should not constantly walk around being afraid. Be aware, and God sees this. It's a consciousness. It's an elevated consciousness, and then God sees it. Wow, he is really careful with what he says, what he does, where he goes, promises he makes, and so on and so forth. And if something bad happens, you have to thank God in the same aspect and in the same zeal as you would when something seemingly good happens, because it all comes from the same source. So with that, we're done for today. Please stay tuned for the conclusion of the chapter next week. And please pay attention, like we said, what's going on right now in the world. Just really pay attention. It's called retribution. Okay, so as always, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.